Federal government approves additional social investment program, targets youth empowerment.
9 international airlines relocate operations to new terminal of Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport.
Governor Nyesom Wike declared winner of Rivers governorship elections.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we engage more guests on the 4th part of our series, Managing Electoral Victory.
All right, now the tension arising from the 2019 general elections is by now almost over.
Yes, Kingsley, with Rivers State governorship elections concluded, all the dust raised during the 2019 election is gradually settling down.
Of course, we will expect that matters relating to litigation will continue until the entire judicial process is exhausted. Now, what we have seen in 2019 has been very interesting, with many surprises and, of course, joys for some and jeers for others.
And naturally, the expectations is jubilation for the winners. And of course, many Nigerians are looking forward to the business of governance.
Well, Juma, you know that this is the 4th in the series of our conversation on managing electoral victory. We had a 3rd one yesterday, and it's been prompted, of course, by the need to see how the winners and losers in the 2019 general elections can work together for the purpose of enhanced national development.
Kingsley has observed the topic Managing Electoral Victory has been very engaging, with inputs from several notable members of the Nigerian political class, and the last 3 editions sharing their experiences on how to achieve peaceful coexistence with the opposition in building a united Nigeria.
And of course, in today's episode of the series, we shall deepen the interrogation of the issues that are relevant in managing electoral victory, including, for instance, the question: when should politics take a backseat and actual governance commence? And how can the winners in the 2019 elections, of course, co-opt the losers as well as other relevant stakeholders? And in particular, what is also the responsibility of other stakeholders with regard to lending a helping hand in the development of their various constituencies?
And our guests will also tell us what politicians should do after their electoral victories. What lessons has the political class learned so far during and after the polls? And how ready are they to face the business of governance?
All right, our guests, whom we have later on in our conversation segment, will seek to provide answers to those questions and more. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and it's on that note that I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are broadcasting here from our Abuja headquarters studios.
And I am Jummai Yusuf. Good to have you join us on the program this morning. As always, we shall bring you our complimentary segments, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign and entertainment news. Now, let's join Nolene Ame with the morning news. Hello, Nolene. Good to see you.
Hello, Jummai. Good to see you too. Good morning to you, and good morning to you, Nigeria. This is the early morning news. The federal government has approved an additional social investment program known as the Empower Knowledge Multi-Track Youth Empowerment Scheme. Minister of Budget and National Planning Udo Udoma, who announced this after the Federal Executive Council meeting, said the scheme is aimed at transforming beneficiaries from unemployed as well as underemployed trainees to employed citizens and entrepreneurs.
Beneficiaries will be empowered to train 5 other youths via the training platform and ultimately engage them in the operations of his or her maintenance shop, which means that this will translate to the creation of an additional 60,000 jobs. It's a 9-month duration, 259,000 per youth for the training, and 207,000 for the work tools, the kits, the equipment.
The Federal Executive Council has approved the immediate completion of the headquarters of the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development in the nation's capital, Abuja. Also approved by the Council is the hand over to beneficiaries the various completed projects executed under the Ecological Fund program at over 15 billion naira.
For the revised estimated total cost of 2,650,676,179.68 kobo to complete the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development headquarters in Abuja.
The state-of-the-art facilities at the new terminal building of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, has continued to attract international airlines as 9 out of 13 have relocated their operations to the new terminal building.
2 have requested extension to this April for logistic reasons. Obviously, not because of facilities in the terminal. The challenge is now on them to move in, or they stay in the old facility that will soon close for renovation.
Incumbent governor and candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Nyesom Wike, has been declared winner of the March 9th governorship election in Rivers State. State Returning Officer Professor Teddy Adaez declared him winner, having polled 886,264 votes.
Of the PDP, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared winner and is returned elected.
The presentation by the Nigerian Television Authority before the House of Representatives Committee on Information of its budget performance in 2018 and proposals for 2019 has been described as one of the most comprehensive so far at the ongoing budget defense at the National Assembly. The Director General of the NTA, Yakubu Ibn Muhammad, alongside other members of management, appeared before the committee Wednesday for budget defense.
Funds were appropriated, and that enabled us to get the necessary equipment that we needed, especially for the coverage of the 2019 elections. Like I said, we covered the elections in a manner never before done in the history, in the 41-year history of the NTA. For this, we are eternally grateful to God and to all those on whose shoulders, we cried, who listened to our cries, and who wiped our tears.
As for tomorrow, consider your proposal. I'll get back to you.
The Code of Conduct Tribunal has fixed Monday, 15th of April for the final address to the tribunal by the defense and the prosecution in the assets declaration case against Justice Walter Onnoghen. This follows the closure of the defense case at Wednesday's hearing.
We came to the conclusion that we should close our case at this point, that no case whatsoever has been disclosed, as we said in our no-case submission.
They are the judges of their own case, so they decide when to close. But what I'm happy about is that neither the prosecution nor the defense has delayed this matter.
Meanwhile, the National Judicial Council, NJC, has received the report of the 5-man committee set up to investigate petition against the suspended Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onnoghen, and the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad. The National Judicial Council, rising from its emergency meeting, however, said that it has since communicated its decisions to President Muhammadu Buhari before making it public due to its sensitivity. The council said it did not delve into the assets declaration matter since it is sub judice. In a statement signed by the NJC Director of Information, Sojoyi, the Council also resolved that by the nature of the decisions reached, it would be inappropriate to go public before conveying it to Mr. President. What happens when top security chiefs meet? Interventions by the Nigerian Air Force, including advanced early warning systems, are just a tip of the iceberg from a just concluded meeting between the Chief of Air Staff and Acting Inspector General of Police.
We don't have the air capability, but the Air Force has the air capability. We can have a joint operation to deal with this crime within the country.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Jumai after this break. Thank you for watching.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toma Daba Ben and Ishak Modibo Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standard to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls for TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And on the business package this morning, the African Development Bank is projecting Africa's economy to grow by 4% in 2019 from an estimated 3.5% in 2018. Plus, a story also from the International Monetary Fund indicating that the Central Bank of Nigeria's tight monetary policy stance is appropriate for Nigeria's economy. Details of these stories with our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
Welcome. Now we begin with Federal Inland Revenue Service plan to recoup tax revenue of 750 billion naira from about 55,000 tax debtors. The Executive Chairman, FIRS Tunde Fowler, disclosed this while addressing the House of Representatives Joint Committees on Finance, Appropriations, Aid, Loans and Debt Management and other relevant appropriations subcommittees. He explained that the recent substitution exercise carried out by the service had led to the recovery of 23.25 billion naira and recorded an increase in value-added tax collection between 2015 and 2018. Mr. Fowler maintained that the service is expanding its VAT collections with the adoption of State Accountant General's collection platform, among other initiatives. Although the tax enforcement has generated 28.51 billion naira, while $77.8 million had been recovered, some individuals decried the projected VAT increase.
So if you say you want to increase value added, on what and what? Is it the commodity or the things, the materials, or the farm produce? Where?
If you not add that one now, there will be a serious level of inflation in there. goods and prices of things in Nigeria. So I think they should look inwards and know where they can generate funds elsewhere, like agriculture and mineral resources and all that, than just increasing the VAT.
Similarly, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma reaffirms federal government's determination to improve its revenue generation this year at the ongoing budget defense at the House of Representatives Joint Committee on Finance. In the meantime, the IMF has called for partnership to curb illicit financial flows. This is in view of the delicate state of the global economy following the anticipation of 70% slowdown in growth. This is the submission of the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, Christine Lagarde, while addressing the American Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C., ahead of the World Bank IMF spring meetings, which will open in Washington, D.C. next week, on steps to upgrading financial regulations to curtail illicit financial flow, improving debt transparency. Christine Lagarde emphasized the need for countries to partner to curb the menace. These financial experts say will go a long way in tackling the threat of illicit financial flows across nations of the world.
There's a lot of money that doesn't go through data, and people walk across borders with money. We know this. People smuggle diamonds or drugs or even ivory through poached processes. If we were to look at the things that are most important to our African governments, it is the fact that we are not setting into place systems that will allow us to properly monitor and govern finances across the continent for each of our countries.
Illicit financial flow for the past 30 to 35 years stand between $1.2 trillion to $1.4 trillion. And average about $50 billion every year. Nigeria contributes a significant portion of that. And so it's a figure that does not augur well for our economy, and it's not something that we should continue to condone.
Now let's take a look at the closing figures of trade on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. That's business news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues.
Thanks, Comfort. Next is newspaper review.
All right, newspaper reviewer Bayo Turbe is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so let's go straight to the papers we have this morning. We have 5 or 6 of them. Very quickly, there are stories that are common to the front pages of the papers. Nigerian pilot, lead story says, Wike wins. With 3 riders as INEC finally declares results of Rivers governorship election. The figures of the victory are there. Wide jubilation in Rivers, Atiku and Senkondos react. Another rider says, what next for Amechi? And above that headline, but below the nameplate, NJC ends Onoren Mohammed probe, keeps mute on findings. That's the rider to that headline. And Nigerian embassies stink. Senate laments and blames federal government for inadequate funding. And the photograph on the front page there of the Nigerian pilot, of course, shows the vice president as well as the governor of Abia State applauding the state government during the presentation of the PEBEC 2019 awards in Abuja yesterday. Now, for the Daily Independent paper, you also have the stories on Onore as well as the outcome of the elections in Rivers. Above the nameplate, therefore, of the Daily Independent, by the way, let me start from the lead story, which is below the nameplate. It says NJC, that's Judicial Council meeting on Onore and Mohammed, ends in deadlock with the rider CC trial suspended CJN to get judgment date April 15th. That will be, of course, the day that the addresses will be adopted. And then above the nameplate says jubilation as INEC declares Wike winner of Rivers governorship elections. Nigeria, 7 others face acute hunger. That's according to the UN. And IMF says Nigeria's slow economic recovery can't reduce poverty. And Air Peace orders 30 brand new aircraft in $2.1 billion deal with Embraer. And also there on the front page of Daily Independent, UN warns of high prospect of nuclear war. And federal government approves 3.4 trillion naira promissory notes to offset debts and salaries. Court sacks Delta North Senator-elect Nwaboshi. And alleged forgery, High Court judgment can't stand, says Adeleke. Second lead story on the front page says division in APC over plans to expel Amosun and Okorocha, and Zamfara government blames Fulani for banditry in state.
Yeah. Yes, let's start with the news that everybody's been waiting for. It may be recalled that elections for the governorship and state assembly of March 9 was held, where 29 states and 1 state has been outstanding. Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State has been declared winner. He polled 886,264 votes to beat ACC's Biokomabo Awara, who scored 173,857 votes. This marks an end to the last of the 29 states, and it said that since return to democracy, election in Rivers has never been peaceful. This was an opinion expressed by the leadership. It says that the people of the state usually are enveloped with fear whenever election approaches. It will recall that as far back as 2003, elections have never been peaceful in the oil-rich Rivers State, so much so that the Rivers State and the acronym Rivers of Blood. It points out that the current status is that 4 years has been a reversal of statuses. 2015, Rivers was headed by an APC governor and challenged by a federal minister in cabinet. The reverse is the same now. I said the dramatic personnel are the political leaders who are actually pushing and engaging the political conflict onto high violent level. The military is involved in Rivers, but as a repelling force against armed thugs to create enabling environment for voters to be able to vote. So far, 4 military personnel have been shot dead in this year's election. 2 are critically ill in conditions in hospital. The nexuses for the violence are Abonema, Kana, Obiapo, where talks are always on the prowl. If there's any lesson to be learned at all, is that Rivers people must know that elections is not war. The other concern is the heightened alert reported in papers about rising incidences of kidnapping. The Daily Trust reports that the spate of kidnapping and ransom taking has reached an outrageous and alarming proportion that there's a need for declaration of a national emergency. The paper says that kidnapping that used to be an intermittent night affair along Abuja-Kaduna Expressway is now carried out broad daylight. The latest was a brazen attack yesterday, 3:30 p.m. around Akilibu village. Commuters were forced to park their cars and wait for security. Governor Nasir El-Rufai, whose convoy was plying the highway, had to detail his security to clear the air. Some of the criminals were killed, and unfortunately, some security men sustained injuries. Similarly, a Daily Trust reporter indicated that he was on his way from Kaduna, and about 4:15 p.m. in a village near Kuruminkare, there was also another kidnap incident. Villagers told the reporter that kidnappers had come to take farmers from the villages. The stretch between Katari and Rijana along that road is declared as ground zero, where kidnapping is most prevalent along Abuja-Kaduna Expressway. Yesterday, also in Kaduna town, along Mandu Road, kidnappers were attempting to abduct and expatriate, and the police had to intervene. 3 kidnappers were killed, and the policeman, unfortunately, had to pay the supreme price. Daily Trust has illustrated that in January, there have been 19 incidences of kidnapping and 41 victims. In February, 27 incidences, 105 victims, and in March this year, 22 incidences with 58 victims. So far, there have been kidnapping incidences in 17 states of the Federation, the highest coming from Katsina with 16, and others are Kaduna, Federal Capital, and Rivers with about 6 incidences each. Zamfara has 5, Edo 5, and the least are in Abia, Cross River, and Kano with 1 or more incidents each. So it is something that requires serious critical emergency. And the Chief of Army Staff was on record as saying that because of pressure put by the Air Force and security agencies in Zamfara and Birnin-Gwari area, the criminals have now migrated towards the Kaduna-Abuja Expressway. You recall that even in Zamfara, one of the criminals was so bold that he declared himself the Buhari of the forest. Yes, he had been killed a long time ago, but they are seriously on the prowl.
But you said it, this calls for a national emergency on kidnapping. There's virtually no part of the country where there are no regular reports. If you recall, last week we were just discussing what also plays out on the Lagos Benin Expressway through Shagamu, through Ore, in particular, somewhere between Ore and Okada Junction, where the kidnappers are said to be on the rampage. I mean, they waylay motorists and then take their victims into the forest and elsewhere in the country. I think it calls for a national emergency. Now that we no longer have election policing or election security issues, let's face, this very unacceptable situation with regard to banditry. Assuming Governor El-Rufai wasn't on the Kaduna-Abuja highway yesterday, what would have happened to those motorists?
Only last week, the Chief of Army Staff identified 14 forests across the nation that have become haven for criminals.
Those forests, some of them are said to be forest reserves.
Yes.
Forest reserves. Now, you also asked the question, because I recall there was a time when we were discussing the issues relating to farmers' herdsmen clashes and what they were doing inside the forest, and that these attacks were not usually in the cities. There was some news then that they were going to revitalize the forest guards. So what has happened now to the forest guards, who have been either remobilized or recruited?
It's a very sad development, actually. And use bio. Okay. We'll go to the editorial, Kingsley.
You have other papers there, just any other?
Yes, sharply, still outrage over raising spate of kidnapping. That's on Daily Trust. We have below the masthead, Onoge. NJC sends report to Buhari. Meningitis claims 48, hits 15 states. Nigeria's GDP to grow by 2.5% in 2020. That's from the IMF, and the illustration of reported cases of kidnapping from January to April 1st, 2019. It's quite alarming, 22 incidents so far. And husband killing, court decides on Mariam Sanda today. PDP absent as Ganduje, others get return certificates. How Wike won Rivers governorship election. And from the Punch newspaper, we have reactions as Dangote asks northern governors to combat extreme poverty. Kingsley, we have to go to editorial now. Time is not on our side.
Our editorial is coming from the Nigerian Pilot. This morning it's at page 3. And the headline for the editorial is Constituency Projects and Accountability.
Well, constituency projects are projects initiated by members of the National Assembly as their own impetuses for development in the national budget. In the past, it has raised questions whether it is the prerogative of the members of the National Assembly to actually do budgeting. Budgeting is supposed to be an executive function while the legislator approves the budget. But they say they are not a rubber stamp, and as representative of the people, they have also the initiative to also suggest areas of development. There, however, there is a misinformation about constituency projects. An impression is created that it is the legislators who execute them. No. The projects are identified, and the agency whose responsibility is it is actually the ones that carry it out. The legislators are supposed to monitor and report to the National Assembly to show that it is implemented. The latest impetus, however, is that the Independent Corrupt Practices Agency has identified that monies meant for constituency projects are not properly utilized, and it is investigating that. Other areas that is supposed to intervene and investigate concerns universal basic education, National Health Insurance Scheme, and other such agencies to ensure that government gets the worth of the monies they have invested in those agencies.
All right, Bayo, on that note, we'd like to thank you. I'm sure you're looking forward to tomorrow, which is Friday.
Friday.
Okay, Bayo, thank you very much for being with us this morning. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be having our guests join us on the conversation Managing Electoral Victory. It's the 4th in the series.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toma Daba Ben and Ishak Modibo Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space. An evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency caution. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. To set the tone for our discussion on managing electoral victory, here's a report by Victor Azul.
After a long and winding campaigns culminating in the emergence of winners and losers, Good Morning Nigeria has focused on the theme managing electoral victory in the last few editions. As guests on today's edition get set to bring the discussion to a close at this fourth time of asking, let's remind you of the perspectives preferred by guests on Wednesday's edition of the program on how to manage electoral victory.
There is no victor, there is no vanquish.
For re-elected Plateau State Governor Simon Lalong, winners of elections must run an inclusive government in the interest of the people.
You should understand that you are not governing indigenous alone. You are governing indigenous and non-indigenous. You are not governing Christians alone. You are governing Christians and non-Christians. And so many other factors that...
You have to separate politics from governance and public administration. At the level of politics, you can talk about partisanship. He's from our party. Then when election is won and lost, first of all, to begin with, the political party, if it wants to continue in good health, must fix itself internally.
Others talked about rewarding loyalty and harmonization of ideas.
First of all, reward those who have been with you, and then woo those who were in the opposition, so that in future you will come together and place national interest or the state interest above the interest of the individuals.
You know, when you go into a contest, certainly like election, you should expect somebody to win and someone to lose. It's possible that each and every contestant has a kind of a blueprint or a development plan for the state or the country. So it is all very, very important to bring these people together so that these ideas can be put together for the advancement and development of such a society.
They all agree that post-election reconciliation is important, but at what point should politics be given a backbench for actual governance to commence? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will deepen the conversation.
All right, thank you very much, Victor Azul, for that background, including, of course, excerpts from the conversation that we had on the third installment of the discussion on managing electoral victory. Today, we have guests with us here in the studios, and we'd like to first welcome His Excellency, the Governor of Abia State, Dr. Okezie Ikpeazu. Your Excellency, a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you, Kingsley, and good morning.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is former Senator of the Federal Republic, Hayrat Gwadabe. Distinguished Senator, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And we equally have in the studio Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, a public affairs analyst. It's a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. Also joining us on Good Morning Nigeria is Michael Ajayi, a political analyst. It's good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Michael, we're delighted to have you with us on the program this morning. The nature of our electoral system, without question, is such that electoral victory is sweet because it is total, and electoral defeat is bitter because defeat is also total. But for the victor, what comes to mind immediately upon learning that you have been declared and returned as a victor, and thereafter, what are the next steps? Let's begin with His Excellency.
Thank you very much. For me, I think that victory in an election is not a personal thing. It's, at best, victory for your policies, victory for your agenda, victory for your manifesto, victory for all the promises you've made, because it comes with it a burden on your shoulder to acquit yourself and deliver. And in doing so, the minimum requirement for leadership is that you must provide a platform for everybody to participate. Therefore, you are forced to be magnanimous even in victory. It is not about your personal goal or agenda. So if you want to take your state, your local government, or the nation from one level to the other, you must be able to open your arms and accept contributions from everybody. Most importantly, some of us whose background is the sciences, we're taught in school that negative results are as important as positive results because they mirror, what you ought to do. Therefore, all those who did not agree with you pushed the adrenaline in the first place in you for you to win. Therefore, they are important. And then you have to take time to analyze their opinion, where they varied and why they varied, where they took the positions they took, going forward. So that you can aggregate all of this and then try to give your best. It's a very risky thing for you to think that it is a personal victory. It's not a prize, it's not a diadem. But rather, it's victory for your policies, and you need everybody to come on board. However, the reaction of the victor in the days ahead as he moves into the next level is more often than not determined also by the behavior and attitude of those who perceive electoral loss as a personal loss. It's not a personal loss. It could mean wait. It could mean try again. It could mean something is happening. Let us watch it go through. But if you take it to mean a personal loss, then the bitterness becomes, very fierce, and that begins to reflect on the disposition of not only the leader at that time, but also those who are supporting, because they begin to draw lines and all of that. But it is the responsibility of the man that is the beneficiary of it all, according to the benevolence of God, to open his arms for the interest of the state to bring everybody on board.
You were talking about a lot of bitterness. This 2019 elections was well fought, with some surprising upsets in some states where the ruling party was having a sitting governor and then they were upstaged. So when does the healing begin so that government can hit the ground running to fulfill their promises to the electorate?
It should be instant. And my advice is that even in the electoral process, from the preparation of INEC, conduct of election, behavior of all stakeholders, the police, the military, and everybody, we should not push it beyond where reconciliation becomes impossible. You know, reconciliation and coming back to the table for the interest of the state should actually be front-loaded. You know, so that at the end of the day, your utterances during the campaign period, your speeches even after the election, should all dovetail towards coming back to the table and developing the enterprise, whatever it is. You know, so as far as I'm concerned, I think everybody has a role to play. And then politics should not be anybody's profession. People should, you know, also have other things at the back of, so that when you try and it doesn't work, you can go back to what you used to do and then try again.
Well, some of our guests in the series that we have had have tried to make a distinction between a fresh election victor and a re-elected candidate. Now, give us the benefit of your experience, 2015 versus 2019.
Well, what makes politics exciting or election exciting is that no two elections are the same. You know, for me, the challenges I envisaged in 2015 are going to be different from the challenges that, you know, at that time, people knew that you may have an opportunity to come back. You know, so when they are pushing against their policies, they don't push, they push in a way that, well, who knows, this guy may come back. But right now, you're going to find some people who would say, let us just wait him out, you know, and all of that. So you must find devices and strategies to go through that. Again, there's a burden, there's a responsibility on a re-elected person. That is that it is a renewed endorsement and confidence that there are a few expectations that people want you to. So you must think about concluding and concluding your projects. You must think about embedding your vision and making it attractive for those that are going to come after you to also, you know, take a cue. Otherwise, when your vision is weak, you have dislocated policies, and at the end of the day, the state suffers for it. That is why we used to have in those days many abandoned. You know, somebody could be doing a monorail, and then your successor comes and then doesn't feel like all the money that you used to erect the stations go down the drain. So the strength of your vision, it should be your priority to make sure you establish it, to make sure that it becomes the darling of the people of the state. So the challenges are different, both in the elections and the expectations. But at the end of the day, I think it is the responsibility of that person that put his feet in the door to say he wants to run. No excuses this time. You have to deliver.
All right. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Governor of Abia State. So let's pause you in the meantime and then bring in the other guest. Distinguished Senator Harriet Gwadabe, of course, you've listened to His Excellency. You have your own perspective on this. What duty is imposed on an election victor in an often acrimonious electoral process?
Well, His Excellency raised a lot of points during his discussion. A person that wins an election, whether at the local government level or a legislative level or right up to the governorship or presidential level, has an onus of a duty to perform to ensure that every citizen that is resident in his territory or within his or her constituents are properly taken care of. You cannot segregate and bring policies that affects one person alone. Moving on from there, you find electoral victory of a person that is in the legislature is different. The expectations for them are different from those for the executive. In the situation of executive victories, the elected governor or the president or the chairman of the local council cannot move forward without taking into consideration the realities on the ground. What are these realities? First, the situation of infrastructure that he meets, the situation of employment, population, and possibly decaying or non-existent infrastructure. Party also has an influence on performance of an elected person. To a large extent, it's beginning to be more party involved now. In the past 16 years, each elected person has been going on as if he's a lord unto himself or a lady unto herself. And it's my policy, my people. We have to move away from that. It's a collective. Whatever policy you push forward will affect every single person in that constituency, positively or negatively. In so doing, the expectation of those who vote for you is quite high. And most of those electorates that vote for us have, first of all, their personal interest. What am I going to get from supporting Mr. A or Mrs. B? That puts tremendous pressure on the person to do the job. Secondly, the individual themselves considers themselves, okay, where's your background? Where are you coming from? What do I want to showcase? The moment power is being stolen, the moment they take office, take the oath of office, everything changes. It's like the power descends on a person and you're a different person. A different personality emerges. And when that personality emerges, it pulls on their responsibility. And what we tend to see is those individuals want to first satisfy their ego as to what they want to achieve. Oh, I'm going to push this. And 4 years is really very short, extremely short. I pray the Constitution can be changed to expand the time. Because the moment you're voted in, you're supposed to hit the ground running. But most of the people are fresh starters, and they take time to learn the ropes. Secondly, what you have planned to do, if you're a fresh elected person, you have to understand what you meet on the ground. It's like moving into a house, you don't even know what the workings of that house is, but you already know what you want to do with that. So you're going to have a period of adjustment. But the electorate are not patient to wait for that period, and they expect instant change in their life and situation. Now, the burden there is carrying everybody along. In a very highly contested elections, there's a lot of hostility between those who have won and those who have lost. Similarly, between the people that have supported the winners and those who have not supported the winners. So you now find, even where the leader, the elected man, wants to stretch a hand of friendship and build bridges, the supporters will say, no, this is war. You can't do that. You must, you must set them aside. But electioneering is a period of competition. After the game, we should start afresh and face governance. And the electorate, we that vote for those in office, must understand that. What is it we're expecting of them? Good governance, accountability, and the projection of policies that are long sustainable. It's important that, let's take an example of a governor. Once he comes in, if he's a fresh governor taking over in a state, he must understand during his transition period. It's the transition period between now and the swearing-in period is tricky. The outgoing officials are very difficult to engage, and a lot of things go under at that period. So you really don't know what you're going to meet, whether you're going to have a huge debt burden or not. Now, by the time you assess it, you're still going to bring a blueprint to work with. That may not even fit. It may be a square blueprint and you're meeting a round hole. And you must have the dexterity of change that you can quickly adjust within a period. And he must also have a roadmap, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And because I said the 4 years is too short, because by the third year, it's electioning. So he in effect has 2 years to perform. We don't begin to see that, but effectively it's a 2-year period. You now have, as far as the legislature is concerned, those elected into the legislative houses are peculiar because those who are fresh are learning the ropes. Those who are there, have come back, tend to now, they have mastered themselves. They know what needs to be done. They now have to be patient with the newcomers so that they can support the direction of voting. Now, in a house where you have 100% party, one party controlling, particularly in states, it's easier to move ahead, particularly if you have at least 50% of those returning as who have returned, rather than fresh intakes. But where you have a completely new set of people coming in, I assure you the first year is going to be a year of understanding and not quite understanding whether they're supreme to the executive or they must kowtow to the executive. Now, at that point, it is the public that begins to suffer. Issues that are supposed to be legislated on will be delayed. And budgeting process in the first year is really very not as it ought to be. By the second year of budgeting, things begin to settle down and they begin to understand it. But we, the electorate, have to be very, very patient with those we have elected. At least give them time to settle down, but we must engage them. The tendency before was you vote for someone and you just fold your hand and let him run the show. But that has changed and is changing, and a lot of people now understand their rights and they're not giving up and folding their hands. The expectations are high, and we need to make sure that they're accountable. It's the lack of accountability that makes for lack of fulfillment of electoral promises. And then you also have the burden of having to be going back and forth to courts, because for a while, sometimes it takes two years before a decision is declared.
The governor had the experience.
Can you respond to that?
He had the experience, yeah. All right, we'll come to that part of the conversation. Yeah, but let's bring in Michael Ajayi, who is a political analyst. Let's have your opening salvo on this subject matter. What does it take to manage election victory?
Well, it takes the heart of gold to manage election victory. I seem to have a different view from His Excellency, the established view that you must have handshake across the aisle after the election. You know, the analysts have come to conclude that the winner-take-all is one factor that's been responsible for instabilities in most of the third world democracies. When you win an election, or when you lose an election, it is seen to be very painful. Yeah. Painful in the sense that huge investment has gone into the election, and you have lost. The fundamental question you ask yourself is, how do you recoup that money you have spent in that election, violating the spending limit established by law? Another problem that confronts you as a candidate is, how do I sustain my supporters? because you face the possibility of being thrown in the cold. Your supporters will begin to move away in droves because they need sustainability. You have to sustain them to be able to retain them. But the resources to do that is no longer available to you. Meanwhile, you're already biting your fingers that you have lost election where you have spent so hugely. His Excellency will agree with me on this view. You have spent so much. And no, I'm not saying you have spent so much. I mean, you have to spend because we know the electorate. They will make a heavy demand on you. That is the truth.
But you should spend what you can bear.
Yeah, but Your Excellency, you know I'm telling the truth.
Yes, but
you spend so hugely.
Have you been on the field before?
Well, we're all in the field. We're all in the field. We know what happens. We are not strange to Nigerian politics or African politics. Yeah. Before they vote for you, they demand for money.
But is that the reason after election, most of these people forget about the electorate because they demanded for money before elections?
Well, if you forget about them, don't forget when you're forgetting them. But governors, to accommodate your enemy within your...
How they want to see governance evolve. So in that situation, it means, just the way Mao Zedong said, it's a war without bloodshed. So it's a war of words, so that you can be able to win people over. And that is how politics is played. So it's canvassed around ideas and the way you want. And that is why even some major political parties that contested this election, some ran their campaign around restructuring, some ran it around youth employment, some around anti-corruption, and so on and so forth. So it all depends on what is appealing to people. But in our own polity as it is constituted, who is able to give me contract? Who is able to give me employment? Who is able to sustain me? So it has a lot of influence. And that is why, if you remember our last conversation, I said, as we continue to discuss the polity of this country, two things are clear. It's either we want infrastructure or stomach infrastructure. And the first challenge that usually confront elected officials in this country are two things. One, they usually promise what is not even in their purview to deliver. For instance, you promise that you are going to create employment. Your bureaucracy is already saturated. Your overhead cost as well as recurrent. The recurrent is more than even the money you're using for capital expenditure that way. So people do not even have the required skills to fend for themselves. So the government bureaucracy becomes the only sustainable avenue to employ people. And that is why issue of unemployment usually take the front burner. So the person that is elected is always trying to fulfill one of the campaign promises of, okay, providing employment. The bureaucracy is overbloated. But again, if you look at other land and climb, it is not even government that create employment. Government creates enabling environment for the citizens to take advantage of what is available to employ themselves. So contestation around ideas, well, is good. What has been happening in Nigeria is trying to do one thing, trying to ensure that ideas, changes that we want to see in governance usually form part of the manifesto. But again, the indirect influence about our politics, and that is why this issue of vote buying is becoming obvious. Now, most of the electorate believe that as soon as we vote you into power, you are not going to fulfill your promises. So what can we get before we lose you? So they come to demand for what they can get at the point of voting. And that is why when elections started votes started counting in this country, issues of vote buying became pronounced, as we've witnessed across board. So seriously, if we really want to move forward, we need to start discussing what the state can do, what the government can do. First, creating enabling environment for people to be able to fend for themselves, as well as facing the issue of governance. And what is issues of governance? Ensuring that basic amenities, public infrastructure, public institutions are working to service the people. And things should not be based on patronage system and cronyism.
All right, Abdulrahman Abu Hamis, thank you very much there for your opening salvo. Let's return to His Excellency. I mean, there are two sides, basically, to managing election victory. One has to do with getting your team, and then, of course, the other has to do with the business of governance. I wanted to return to the issue of in terms of disposition, I think I will do that right away so that we can dispense with it. How easy is it to say, look, considering the psychology of our elections, the fierce contestation, as it were, and the bitterness that it generates, on the one hand, and for those who also have to go through litigation, and you know the way our jurisprudence is, heritage jurisprudence, once you take a person to court, it is not as if, you know, you are seeking to enforce your rights, or you are seeking to make a claim and make sure that the claim comes to you. It breeds enmity, as it were. And in your case, you were in the tribunal, you were through it for 3 years. So how does that therefore condition your mind in terms of assuming you wanted to do that and say, look, okay, I want to stretch a hand across the aisle, even though Mike Ajayi says that, look, that hand shouldn't go too far.
Well, I completely, you see, we have an assignment in our hands in Nigeria. And I'm an optimist. You know, one can criticize the system from here to heaven, but the burden of changing this country is on our shoulders. And I really do not see everything wrong in Nigeria. I see a few things, a few possibilities and hope. Having said that, it's all about the individual that I would like to call here the beneficiary of the victory, so to speak, the victor, if there's anything like that. Your disposition is important. For me, in my state, my greatest asset is my people. Not crude oil, not anything else, but my people, because they have enormous capacity to do things with their hands. Put them in a desert and they'll create things. Therefore, I can't find anybody anywhere, if you like, be in whatever party that I want to throw away. And my first promise is that I will create a platform. We have had the greatest intervention, the diaspora intervention in Abia, between the last 3 years than we have had in the past 60 years put together. Because whenever I find the opportunity to talk to my people outside Nigeria, I say to them, bring back your expertise. I've not come to campaign to a white man to come and invest. And you are his neighbor. He knows you've not gone home for 20 years. What am I telling the white man? Please come. I will give security, I'll provide housing, I'll do everything that will, you know, and it has been working. I can count how many medical containers and medical whatever. In fact, there is an office that deals with medical outreaches today. Having said that, I want to tell my friend Ajayi that even in the midst of this 3 years long-drawn battle in the court, some of those who were in court with me, I took people from their camp and appointed them. And when there's an opportunity for, in the civil service, for, I say, please, my brother, I know you are somewhere in Lagos. Do you have nominees for whatever? Because the politicians are the same everywhere. Whether they may be in PDP today, but they're the same kind of people you find in the APC. At what point will they become my enemies? Tomorrow, if I'm still in this thing, they may be working for me. You know, so the leader, the person that is in charge, is the person that has the body to look for resources. See, if I bring the best brain from another party to help me solve my energy problem in Abia, I take the credit. So why should I leave him there in the code? No. But you see, those who go to court and then, you know, come off with a long-drawn battle and refuse to accept the olive branch, do it for many reasons, most of which are selfish. They do it, like he alluded to sustain their structure. Hey, we are pursuing something, there is hope. We may tumble something there's a surprise. And in Nigeria, they know that, in fact, we've seen some men dressed like women in Nigeria, and, you know, to tell that a man is now pregnant and all. So things are possible. They think that it's possible to find a man in a maternity home on Monday. So they create that facade, create that hope, and use it to keep their structure. But they forget the other way, that they are losing sympathy of those who would have ordinarily, even in my own camp, say, that guy has ideas, you know. So at the end of the day, what I want to say is that, well, it is everybody's right to go to court. But the most important thing is the state that you swore to serve. Before you get into an election, you should have an agenda. And I want to serve. So if the people say, don't serve now, it is not a death sentence. If they say, wait, it is not a death sentence. And there is no reason why we won't agree today. And if election time comes in 2023 and you feel like disagreeing with the system and running your election, you can also go and do it. By that time, we probably would have won more people than before. You know, so I have suffered this bitter, long-drawn battle in the court and all of that, and I think it is completely mindless. It's completely mindless. And nobody should think about how to recover. If you continue to cry over spilled milk, yes, you ran an election. And like you said, you were asked to spend this amount of money, and you went to town, borrowed and sold their houses and went into it and all of that. And then people don't do the analysis they need to do before they get into an election. The 2023 election for every good politician begins now. If you are outside, you're not thinking about governance, you should begin to look for the people. Because you need people in my state, 4,000 plus units of voting points. You need people there. You need people to find, even Christ could not find 12 trusted people. To find trusted people in all of those units that will not betray you is not an easy thing. So you need the people. It's not something you go away and then only for you to come back. You need the people. And then it is not about, you can't pay 4,000 people. Some of them will come because they believe in what you are doing. Especially, like I said earlier, your vision has to be strong and transgenerational. I'm a strong believer. That is why we are pursuing Enyimba Economic City in Abia. That project is not an electoral thing, because it's a project that will provide 700,000 jobs in the next 10, 15, 20 years. We want to bring 2,000 people together in one cluster, manufacturing and doing things. So I'll do my bit and market this vision such that those who will come after me, I don't know them, may find it attractive. Or the people will say, this is what we want. On the strength of that, we can continue to push, because that is the only way to go. Crude oil will go away if you don't think about what you need to do. And we are into this industrialization in Abia because everybody knows that our people can do things with their hands. I don't have the land to do the kind of agriculture that my friend in Yobe will do. I don't have the river, so don't give me a fishing net. So what I think my people are good in, I'm pursuing it, and that is where I'm going. As far as I'm concerned, I don't even remember crude oil. I only need it now because I need it to push the frontiers of the economic city we are building. You know, so for me, I think that there should be a place to draw the line. There should be a place to draw the line. And all of us must canvass in the positive direction. We have had enough of the negative things. If we continue to do that, our children will become indolent and give up. Yes, it's good to mirror what is bad so that we can make corrections and make amends going forward. But it is also good to tell people around the world that Nigeria is not a hopeless country.
Okay.
All right.
Kesley, I would like to bring in Abdurrahman Habu Hamis. We've been listening to the conversation, and before you came in, Senator Harrod said 4 years is not enough for governance, because the first year usually is spent in celebration. Before celebrating, and by the third year, people start coming out to contest for your position. Yes. So, how does it, reflect on the promises to the electorate with litigation and all that?
Well, let me start this way. I think there was a governor that appointed someone, and the person went to town celebrating. And the governor heard about the celebration, and he called him to say, you've not assumed your responsibilities, and you are already all over the place celebrating. Why are you celebrating? he couldn't offer any explanation. And as he was leaving Government House, he was fired. Now, I quite agree with that. The first year in Nigeria is usually used for two things. One, ensuring that you cement your relationship among the people, because campaigns are always rancorous. We fight dirty and we do a lot of things. This second aspect of it is the celebration aspect. What are the expectations? What can I get from the system? How do I understand the system? Then before you talk about, so even sorting, as a governor, I sympathize with some of our governors, because it's all about who gets what first. In 1999, that was what played out, you know, issues of furniture allowance, stuff like that, and things like that. So you have a lot of issues to deal with before you settle down for government. But if it were to be a polity that is about service delivery, right from day one, before you take over, you started, okay, putting in place structures to deliver on promises. But because you need to strike deals across board, because you need to tell your opponent not to go to court, because you need a traditional ruler to talk to a social person. So you spend more than 1 year navigating the murky water of politics, because the most lucrative enterprise in this country is politics. And that is why everybody usually go into that. Then the second year, you start to get handled around, okay, stability, we can now work and stuff like that. But what we're saying is this, that if politics is all about service delivery, and I'm going to talk to what His Excellency brought out, he was saying that we need to say positive things about this country, we need to canvass positive things. Two things are very clear. There is a clear distinction about what we are saying and the reality on ground. No matter how we want to paint the country good, the reportage that we are getting in terms of governance, if it's not corresponding, it means we are lying. So our conversation must reflect the true happenings on ground. One, you contested an election. We know the kind of car your family were used to riding. And within 1 year into your office, before we know, they're always going for vacation. Before elections, they don't do that. But after election, they start going to vacation all over the country. Now, even if you want to convince anybody that, okay, the family is not benefiting from the government, nobody was going to believe you, because they were not used to that lifestyle before, and suddenly they enjoy that. Assuming my son was not used to riding Mercedes 500, and after elections, all of a sudden, my son started going to a lot of eyebrow areas, riding 500 series, it becomes a challenge for me to explain. So we need to do one thing as a nation. We need to separate governance and government from our own individual families' lifestyle, so that what we can afford previously, if we keep to that, and our status will change, well, no doubt about it, but not changing to the extent that it becomes flamboyant, that it will send the wrong signals to the people and to the outside world, then we are moving. Now, even if you give 5 years single term, assuming, or 10 years single term, if the polity is designed in such a way that it will continue to drag you back, it will not give you the needed leverage to work for the people, it means you have to spend a lot of time, and that is what some persons are doing now. What they do as government is they have somebody who is the arrowhead that will take care of the issue that are political. So party issues, interests, what, they take care of that. And then they have the technocrats that is led by the governor to deliver. So it means that you are balancing two things. You have somebody who is taking care of, because the political issues will take your time for the whole day. You will need like 48 hours instead of 24 hours, because you are moving from one meeting to another. And by the time you are done with the political meetings to settle interests, to balance interests, your technocratic persons are waiting for you. By then, His Excellency is dozing. He doesn't even have the time, because his time has been consumed between meetings of settling interests. So it's not a matter of time limit. Well, it may have little impact, but it's about scheduling, how you handle these different dynamics of interest that you need to take care of.
All right, Ar-Rahman, thank you very much. Well, still on the time limitation for office holders, particularly now in the executive branch, because I know that Senator Gwadabe was one that raised that point. I'm just wondering, let's get a practical experience from His Excellency, the Governor of Abia State, because the related issue to this has to do with the demands or the pressure on a freshman who's just been elected. There's this phenomenon that we have, it's first 100 days. Some would say, look, it creates a lot of pressure. I recall that on Good Morning Nigeria in 2015, we had the privilege of interviewing President Muhammadu Buhari from the Aso Villa, and he did, of course, did say that the first 100 days that, yes, it tended to have created some pressure for him. Now, what some analysts are also saying is that because, as you said, Your Excellency, that your election victory is a validation of your promises, of your agenda, there is a tendency, therefore, to begin to rush to try to do things in the first 100 days, and mistakes might occur. What was your experience like, and what would you do differently now that you are getting into your second term?
Incidentally, I believe in the first 100 days. I don't even, for me, it's not about what first 100 days, it's about 100 days cycles. Because what you cannot measure or evaluate can be done. What God helped me in 2015, because when it became clear that I was going to run that election, I engaged a few Abians and non-Abians to reason together. Let us talk about where Abia is against the background of a country in recession, as it were, and then what we can do. That naturally enabled me to ask questions around the things we have comparative and competitive advantage over other states. Because you're not going to reinvent the wheel, and you're not going to spend too much energy pushing uphill. The best thing for you to do is to run along the routes that your people, if I want to create a new cassava economy now in Abia, using rural women, I'm not going to teach them how to crop cassava. What I need to do is to get the improved stems and then show them a picture of the new economics. How many 10 plus of cassava will give you, assuming I establish a cassava processing plant to give me starch. Now, they will understand and key into, because that is what they... So that was how we came to the 5-point agenda. My advice is, see, you must come to office with a plan, like distinguished senator said. You must come with a template, and you must have enough buffer to adjust, because what makes you a good leader or otherwise is your dexterity in managing the dynamics of change as they come, because the raw material in politics and governance are human beings, and they change. It's a very, very difficult target. Yeah. They prevaricate at things. So you should be ready to make adjustments within limits. And also, that is why, despite the 3 years in court and all of that, I managed to hold the steering of statecraft, because I knew where I was going. Because some of the things they do are also to distract you so that you won't be able to do anything, so that after 3 years, they'll come back and say that you didn't do anything. So it is your responsibility and duty to put a light to that. And the only way you can do it is if you come with a strong vision. So if you run 100-day cycles in Abia, because I knew I was going to have problem with civil service bureaucracy, so I have a backroom staff that I call Abia State Economic Advancement Team. They are all private sector people. And I use them to threaten my civil service. If you don't do this, I send it to habit. So mine is to dream, and they turn it to a work plan. If I dream, I give it to them to give me a work plan. Based on what? Because they have access to what's happening in the ministries and all of that. And that is why today, so some of the things I count as our achievements in the past 3 years are indeed things that people can see. Abia was number 34 on ease of doing business. Just yesterday, we came second after Kaduna. Abia is 3 on foreign direct investment in Nigeria today. You see, so, because I said, how can I be 34 out of 36 for crying out loud? that is.
You were third from bottom.
Exactly.
Out of 36.
36 scale of doing business. So, but the latest 2018 World Bank rating is put us second to Kaduna. So, you have to have targets and you work on them. You know, and you have to have competent people with private sector mentality to help you. Some of the successes you see being recorded in Lagos State today is because there are more chartered accountants in the Lagos Civil Service than you have in the ICANN chapter in town. You see, so there's a private sector thing that is happening around their civil service. The greatest problem of a newcomer in this office is the civil service. That is his greatest problem. Where is he going to file the files? Who is going to give him a baseline that will enable him locate his agenda, whether it is in agriculture? I mean, Nigeria should be in a place where you see what type of soil do we have in the first place? All the soil tests should have been done and taken for granted. Which area we do well in Tuba? Which area we do well in this and that and that and that? You know, and it is not something you should come to office learning.
Yeah, and the transition committee report often doesn't disclose this in terms of having to relate with the bureaucratic class.
Yeah. Abdurrahman alluded to something like that. How do you choosing the people that will be in the transition committee is an issue also, because human beings in Nigeria don't volunteer information. Even when they see a thief around your window, they don't volunteer information. They don't want case. They don't want anybody to interrogate them. So if you don't choose your transition committee properly, the first thing to do is for you to engage people months before the end of the election to give you an idea of where you are and where the state is and where Nigeria is going. Abia is the focal state in the southeast for 6 things: health, infrastructure, education, 6 things. The reason is that today Abia is the only state that is feeding primary 1 to 6. What I just did was to ambush the federal government policy. And I dare say, ours in Abia, an amendment of the federal whatever is more successful because they are doing 1 to 3. And we know that in Africa, you can't feed some of your children and leave others.
No, we can't.
Who will feed the people in 4 to 6? And what kind of problem do you think will ensue between the elder brother in primary 4 that is not eating anything and his younger brother is eating egg every day? If there's a fight on the way, you fight it alone. So the thing to do is to key into it and make sure that, and that has reversed enrollment in public schools from 141,000 in 2015 to 611,000 in 2018. So you have to ask yourself, where is the federal government going? The color of the flag should not be a deterrent, shouldn't stop me from keying into the federal government policy for the benefit of my people. Hunger does not recognize umbrella or broom. So I have to ambush the federal government projects. I have to know where we are. And then I have to find a way to locate my own agenda and policy. And with people that are capable of driving it, assuming I begin to have problem and bottleneck within the civil service system. But somehow now they are beginning to understand the way I operate.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We've been having a conversation on managing electoral victory. We'll be right back after this break.
Move now! The red light won't kill you. Move now!
To they disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say, I no go dey do am again because change begins with me.
Let's cross the other side of the road.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, I won't come down. I be one carry me past where they go.
Make her they stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on Africa's largest television network, Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our guests with us discussing the subject matter of managing electoral victory. Let's bring in now distinguished Senator Harriet Gwadabe. That's from the legislative side. What are the challenges with regard to managing electoral victory? Looking at it, in particular, from what we have seen in our experience in the past 20 years of the Fourth Republic versus the experience that we had from 1979 to 1983, party intrusion into this. You're smiling because you know where I'm going. It's all right, so take it from there.
Well, the first and foremost, if you compare 1979 that you're talking about and 1999, the constitutions are slightly different. Where you have a situation where you have supremacy of party, nobody can be elected to any office in this country without being on a platform of a particular party. So technically, it's the party that owns the legislatures. But by the 1999 Constitution, it also gives you a liberty where we have this presidential system where the members of the legislature are truly independent. So you arrive on the platform of a party, and while you're on that platform, what are your responsibilities in the chambers? From the moment you take that oath of office, or you've taken that oath, your oath of allegiance is to the nation. So you're battling between your oath to the nation and the oath to the office. But your first work is you are there for the governance, true governance of the Federal Republic, good governance of the country. Now, in deciding party structure within the body polity, the party themselves have to decide from ab initio, one, who, if they're going to apply zoning formula, or secondly, allow each sector to do what they like. Well, in 99, we had it slightly wrong in the PDP. And what went wrong there? The moment the zoning formula was introduced, the president and the vice presidential position had been taken. It was agreed that in the National Assembly, the office of the Senate President would be zoned to a particular area. Now, within that ambience of zoning, you've zoned the offices already as a party. What was expected of us was, now that we've done the zoning formula, let those elected now come together and decide who they want. Are they the ones to decide, or would the party now direct the direction they wish to go? And taking off from the 1999 experience, it was peculiar because all the elected members of that particular party decided on their own that they were lining behind a particular candidate. And they signed to that effect and invited the party executive and spoke with them that this is the direction we're going, align with us, make it a policy that this is the person that the party is going to support. So they had taken the initiative and handed it over respectfully to the party. But the party at that stage did not rise up to that. They kind of shied away and said, no, you do what you want. And in that lacuna, people moved into the presidency and said, you're the leader of the party, not the party, not the party chairman. So you as a leader dictate to the assembly members where you want them to go. From my personal experience, we were invited at the villa by the president at the time, General Olusegun Obasanjo. And
President Olusegun Obasanjo.
No, he was a general, but and also a president at the time. And we were invited, and I remember asking a question that, sir, do you have a direction or a choice of a candidate you wish us to go with, because we were enthusiastic. We did not want to rock the boat. We wanted to deliver for Nigeria. And he said, no, I don't do what you people want. And on that premise, we went to the floor. But unfortunately, it was hijacked in the process. So that's where you saw the rancor, where the people, amongst equals, we're supposed to decide a leadership amongst our equals. Where we have decided that, and you want to subvert it, the House will never be stable because majority will keep wanting to achieve what they intend to achieve. That was why you saw the 1999 processes where we had several Senate presidents. Now, the question now is, at this stage that we are in this ruling party, APC, has it been agreed that the party would dictate? Are the members agreed to that? Everybody has their unfortunately, at our time, we didn't have ranking and processes where, okay, this person is the highest ranking person, let us go with ranking and criteria. Once you have a set of criteria that you wish people to follow, it becomes easier than having, it becomes uncomfortable when you are dictating. Let those amongst equals decide their decision on which way they wish to go. But most importantly now, you're beginning to see a situation where the members, the elected members themselves, wish the party to dictate their turn. They want to follow a party line. And where you have that, it now becomes a problem for you that you wish not to toe the party line. Then it becomes, you are now cross-carpeting and creating friction where ordinarily the friction should not exist. But the bottom line is, at the end of the election process, during the election process, all members of that party must work hard to support their party, and those within who are running for those offices must reach across to the other parties to get as many supporters as possible. In the end, in the Senate, for instance, in the House of Representatives also, it's all about strong leadership. What can that person bring to the table, and what direction can they go, move the National Assembly in? It is very crucial, because if you have the wrong leader in place, you will see a lot of antagonism and pulling away. It is the electorate, we that are outside, all of us, that will end up suffering from the lack of qualitative leadership at the National Assembly. It's critical that the right person emerges. And that right person must have a clear vision of where they need to tap into. And it must align with the vision, to a large extent, of the executive arm. As much as they are supposed to be a watchdog and balance themselves, they must largely align so that those federal policies can benefit Nigerians. And also, the leader must also have the firmness of purpose. That it's easy when you're leading people, and people will come. There's always a lot of politicking in the process, but you must be firm. If you take a stand, even if it's wrong, stand with it and pursue it to the end. And thirdly, they must have this leadership quality of angering to ensure continuous success of that victory on the podium. Nigerians are very expectant, very patient, but our patience are wearing out. There are too many laws that need to be tweaked, and there are new laws that we need to ride up with the challenges of our times. And if we don't have the right leader in place, it becomes even more difficult for governance. And then you have an overlap where even for ordinary interpretation, you wouldn't even have somebody, a leader that would take initiative to say, let's go for interpretation at the courts on this issue, to the extent where the Constitution there's a lacuna in the Constitution. Push the boundaries to bring good governance. That's what we need to be done, that needs to be done. And the person that is leading must definitely be in consonance with his party. You cannot be at variance with your party. You are the leader of men and women that have been elected from 109 or 460 constituencies that are expecting that the policies of government are translated in a manner that benefits them.
All right, Senator Gwadabe, thank you very much. Mike Ajayi, some would say, for instance, that what distinguished senator has said, these are precepts, against the background of what our experience has been in the Fourth Republic from 1999, where you have had a ruling party, whether it's PDP or APC, being antagonistic, the executive and the legislature being virtually at each other's throats. What, therefore, in your opinion, should be the proper approach, considering party supremacy, party platform, and the need sometimes for the legislators to assert their own independence and go it alone, borrowing from the past experience or what you call, previous behaviors of their colleagues. They say once they get on the floor, they have legislators for the Federal Republic of Nigeria or legislators for the state. How then do you reconcile these antagonistic positions?
Well, before I answer that, let me just talk briefly about the tenure of those in government that the distinguished senator mentioned, that 4 years appears to be too short. I think those who crafted that constitution are very correct by putting 4 years. For a boring governor, 4 years is like 20 years. For a performing governor, 4 years is too short. That is my opinion. Then going back to your question, party supremacy is a doctrine that emphasizes that party interest supersedes individual, sectional, tribal interest. It's a doctrine. I'm happy that the distinguished senator was an active participant and could give us what happened. I remember that in 1999, the presidency was rooting for Ewerem somehow. And those other members were not happy about it. But Ewerem eventually got elected as the Senate president. 4 years into his administration, he was impeached, and Okadigbo was chosen. 1999.
Less than 9 months.
Yeah. Oh, 9 months. Okay, less than 9 months. Yeah. So Okadigbo he's a political scientist. And he believed in the concept of separation of powers very strictly and tried to assert the independence, autonomy of the Senate. But this did not go down well with the presidency. And it was war all through his tenure until, you remember the Pandediam saga, the visits and so on. He was eventually removed, and that brought in Pius Ayim. In the same vein, in the House of Rep, you remember the Buhari, who was the Speaker of the House then? Salisu Buhari.
Not Muhammadu.
No. Salisu Buhari. And the certificate saga led to his exit, and then Gali Naba came on board. And again, it was war. He never gave the press. He also tried to assert the independence of the House. And the ruling party ensured that in 2003, he lost to a lowly rated or unknown quantity in ANPP or thereabout, and he never came back to the House. So when you talk of party supremacy, it presupposes internal democracy. It assumes internal democracy and consultation. Once there's internal democracy and consultation, it strengthens the power of party supremacy in any system. But when there's lack of internal democracy, inadequate consultation, to enforce party democracy becomes very, very difficult. That is the truth of it. Now, at the moment, if Section 50 of the Nigerian 1999 Constitution emphasized or states how members are to be elected from among themselves, the leadership. But Section 65, 2B, also went forward to state that every member must belong to a political party and must be so sponsored. That again emphasized the supremacy of the party. And as the senator said, most elected people see the party as a vehicle of transit to move them to the extent that they can alight at any point in time and then begin to assert their independence. But the point is, party supremacy is an important concept that helps the government. And that's why you have chief whip, deputy chief whip. What are they whipping if there's no party, if there's no supremacy of the party? It is assumed that the party has taken a position and you are expected to transmit this position into action. You can see the president who submitted the budget in 2018 December. Up till April, we are still talking of not approved, yet to be approved. Then the economy went into recession twice. So how do we move forward?
No, once. Economy was in recession once. It was prolonged. It was prolonged, but...
it was twice?
No, it was once, but it was prolonged, but we're out of it.
Okay. Well, economy went into recession. The common man is crying on the streets. But the dividend of democracy is not being spread. There's a delay. And before you know it, they announce another recess. They want to go on recess. But you see, an economy in an emergency requires you working in tandem with the executive that brings in the policy. But that is not what we are getting. And that's why there's a problem. And we...
So how do you... You see, I raised the question.
Yes.
I'm sure we are all familiar with this. There appears to be this, if you like, rebellious attitude. I say this with respect to the lawmakers once they get into the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly, where they are not under the control of the governor. We'll come to His Excellency shortly to discuss that. That you find this tension between the legislative branch and the executive branch. Does it arise from what the distinguished senator said, that, look, your oath of office leads you to allegiance, as it were, to the party, so party supremacy. But that your oath of allegiance leads you to the national interest, which therefore fuels the rebellion. But how, as a party that has won an election, PDP had majority in those years you were talking about, and in fisticuffs. And APC had the majority from 2015 until you had some defections, and still the same problem. 2019 going forward, what would you like to see?
Well, I would like to see a non-conflictual arrangement, a positive, a non-adversary relationship, a relationship where both of them will be working together, because we really need it in the next 4 years.
Okay, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some tweets here. Let's go over them quickly. Daily Jackson Solomon tweets, while we look forward to an immediate discharge of responsibilities by the newly elected government officials, we advocate a peaceful transition that will provide for the type of political stability that is critical for trade and economic growth in states and Nigeria at large. And
Festus Akimboyewa has this tweet. Those who have been elected to govern must do so fairly for the whole of the country. They should understand that they have a lot of hard work to do and should do it well.
And Chigeru Marx tweets, the criticism of those in power must be a constructive one. Good morning.
Akeju Olabaju tweets, Nigeria's election is a classic case study for game theorists. But unfortunately, the plethora of electoral disputes is a matter of concern for the political class to apply the theory as players.
And Law Alpha C tweets, winners should exceed party lines in making appointments to prove that the opposition is relevant and not winners take it all syndrome. Winners should operate an open door policy which will involve willingness to accept and adopt suggestions and ideas from the opposition.
Mohammed Abdullah tweets, now what scares most politicians after victory is the expectations of the electorate. So why did you present yourself for election?
And Omo Bolahan, I think by now the euphoria of electoral victories should be shoved aside and we face governance proper. The electorate is desirous of positive impact and that should start immediately.
Now, Stephen has this tweet, that's the Twitter handle. It says, how long will it take our elected leaders to tell us, telling us to be patient while they study documents for 2 years before hitting the ground running? Now, we are too greedy politically in this country. You hear winner take all. That's the language of a greedy person. Not exactly. It's the winner take all is the outcome of our electoral system. Exactly. It's called first past the post. It's different from proportional representation. Exactly,
Kingsley. And Sikiru tweets, politics can't take a backbench. It is in human beings. Politics is discussing people and bringing governance to the people. Actual governance begins when a politician has won the election.
Yeah, Usman Ibrahim has this tweet. Honestly, in our politics, we practice bitter opposition, disagreeing with most of the ways the affairs of government is run. Accommodating such people into your government to manage your policies and programs is difficult.
And Miyaki Moshu tweets, the government in power should not play politics with their reputation, because after their tenure, what they will be left with is prosperity.
And Amangwala has this tweet again. Elections have been won and lost. Let governance commence without further delay. Victors, that's to say the winners, should know another 4 years is just tomorrow. And whoever leads, irrespective of party affiliation, should deliver on their mandate.
And Olaji tweets, enlivening and enlightened discourse by all your guests. Interesting graphs and perspectives from the actors in the field, observers and analysts. Distinguished senator has acquitted herself brilliantly. Nice blend of experience, analysis, and thesis.
And Daniel Dugule tweets, our political elites should know that they have divided and created problems for the masses during the electoral process. They should, as a matter of urgency, begin governance by building friendship and trust amongst participants and the people. Those are the tweets that we can take in the meantime. Just to return to the issue of party supremacy, we're bringing in His Excellency now. Senator Gwadabe gave an experience of what happened in 1999, which obviously has now set the tone for what we are seeing in the 20 years of the Fourth Republic, versus what we saw in the Second Republic, 1979 to 1983. I mean, UPN, the party leader was Obafemi Awolowo, undisputed. GNPP was Abubakar Waziri, undisputed. MPP, Nnamdi Azikiwe. MPN, AMA, Adisa Akinloye. It was undisputed. But we have seen a tweak, and some would say dangerously so, in our politics, that the chief executive, whether of the federation or of a state, is now referred to as a party leader. And the party chairman just becomes a handmaiden, as it were, of the chief executive. Bringing that into managing electoral victory for the legislature, some would argue that it's not so much of a problem at the state level. Again, unfortunately, it's an uncomplimentary remark, because inherent in that is the claim that most, if not nearly all, state legislators have been pocketed by the chief executive, namely the governor. But at the federal level, how can we overcome this antagonism that is that even a party that has a majority is unable to whip its members into line? I'm asking this question because as a governor, I think you're a member of the National Executive Committee of your party, as indeed other governors would be.
And again, I have had one of the most robust relationships with my, in 2015 I had, we have a 24-member house, and 11 came from another party, not my party. But we never had a problem. We could disagree, but, we always found a common cause. I think two things. One, any person that is playing from the flank of the executive should approach the legislature first with utmost respect. Second, you should go with the strength of your vision and canvass it. Because totalitarianism is becoming moribund, even in the family. Even in the family. You can't lead your children by the nose now. So, that is why I think going forward, I don't quite agree with the approach of the national chairman of APC, with due respect. Mr. President needs the support of the legislature. It could be people from PDP, APC, wherever. All of them are Nigerians, and they have the first mandate of supporting projects and vision that is good for the benefit of the rest of us. And we are, like Irali said, this is a country in an emergency. The patriotic zeal of all senators, all members of the Federal House, should drive them to try to see those things that are good in the policy of Mr. President. And not only support it, but expeditiously. If you are going to criticize and make amends, let it be towards making it better, not standing against it for the fun of it. But even in doing that, the only way to recruit adults into the fray is to convince them and tell them this is where we're going. And not to say this thing we're going to do now, nobody from PDP should be allowed to come near. You don't start with a standoff. It has nothing to do with party supremacy. Because even the people in PDP know that the APC is in charge. I mean, it's an APC federal government, and they seem to have some majority in the House also. You know, but you don't, because a lot of people from other parties, call it YPP, call it Africa, could be sympathetic to the policies of Mr. President. You don't shut them off. They could become the most vocal people in the House supporting policies of the federal government. So I think we should work towards creating a family. Yeah. And then end their loyalty through superior logic, not by coercion.
Your Excellency, I really have to cut you short. Time is not enough when you're having a very interesting conversation, Kingsley.
That's right.
Yeah, so we have to sign off our guest this morning who came on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Abia State Governor Ekezie Ipezua. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Welcome.
Also in the studio is former Senator Khairat Abdulrazak Kwadebe. Thank you so much for coming. And we have Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, a political scientist and a public affairs analyst. It's been a pleasure having you here. Also in our studio this morning is Michael Ajayi, a political analyst. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that does it for us on the program today. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. We are back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Thank you for watching.